afternoon and welcome to Countdown to Daytona. I'm Dan Lucas. Thank you for joining us today on, this is the eve of the Daytona 500, and you can tell it's buzzing around here at Daytona International Speedway. It's gotten more crowded, the music's louder, the kids are having a good time. We just had the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series cars buzzing around here as well. Their final practice before the Great American Race tomorrow. Coming up here just a little bit, a couple of hours, will be the Xfinity Series opener, and that's always a big indicator of what we may see on Sunday. So it's going to be a fun race to watch. Young Tyler Reddick, who will also have a car on the 500 tomorrow, gets the pole. He's the defending Xfinity Series champion, so great start for him on his week here. Now he would like to get a win today in the Xfinity Series. We got a lot to cover today. We have Kip Childress joining us from the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. He is the assistant director. That's the fancy title. Let's bring him in here. It's a fancy title for the Wikipedia of NASCAR is what I say. Okay, you know everything.
We'll take that, yeah, fancy title.
Exactly. Kip, thanks for joining us, by the way.
My pleasure.
And as I mentioned, we are getting ready to start the Xfinity Series opener today. So this is a big day for a lot of drivers. Some of these guys are going to drive tomorrow in the 500. How big a deal is this series? Because some of these names, the younger guys especially, are going to be future Daytona 500 champions.
Well, absolutely. They'll use today to try to make a mark for themselves and earn a potential ride in the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series in the future. You know, I think you look at, one of the drivers in the RCR stable, Daniel Hamlin, had a great career. Never quite found victory lane, but was always knocking on the door in the Xfinity Series over the past couple of years. Will now be in his first Daytona 500 here coming up tomorrow. Tyler Reddick's another great example of that. Tyler comes over to RCR new this year. Right out of the box, sets the car on the pole. Not a bad way to start the season.
That's a pretty good start there for Mr. Reddick. Last night we watched the truck race, and I know daytime, nighttime, things are different. This truck race, you had 32 trucks begin, 9 reached the finish line.
32 started.
Yeah. 32 started. Does this race give us more of an indication of what we may see in the 500 as far as conditions, how the track behaves, and how the racing may happen?
Yeah, I think you'll get a better indication from the Xfinity car simply because of the fact that the truck handling characteristics are incredibly different. And we saw it during the race, watching it yesterday. The trucks were a handful,
right?
Especially the bigger the packs were. And I think the other thing that we noticed too in watching some of the races for the Monster Energy Cup cars earlier in the week, where the Cup cars tend to run high, the trucks were running right down at the bottom. They were able to make two wide work for most of the race. The Xfinity race today will give us a better indication of what we'll see tomorrow.
All right. The last practice just took place for the Cup cars, and I believe they were averaging top laps around 191, 192. Yesterday you had more than 10 cars hit a lap of over 200. My question to you is, let's take incidents out of it. How long, if they get into a line and you start streaming along on long stretches, how obtainable is that standard, and how much can they sustain that kind of a run if you have 9, 10, 11 cars running it in the mid-190s?
Yeah, I think that one thing that you'll see with the Cup drivers is that the patience level is a lot higher. When you're racing in the Xfinity Series, even in the Gander Outdoor Truck Series, they've got to get it done quickly. The end of the stages come quicker, the end of the race comes quicker, so they're more apt to get after it a lot sooner. I think we'll see more patience. It's what we've seen throughout the races so far this weekend. They will apply more patience, but when it does come time to break out and make a pass on the money laps, whether it's the end of a stage, definitely coming to the final checker flag, I think we'll see it get pretty exciting in the 500.
All right, Daytona 500, of course, is tomorrow. We talked to a few drivers the other day about just how difficult this race is to win, because there's so many things that go into it, including just luck.
Lots of luck. Yeah,
things have to happen in your favor. You could be having the best day of your career, and if your luck is not right, you are not winning this race. So let's hear from some of these drivers, former Daytona 500 champions. They know what it takes to get across that checkered flag. Let's see what they had to say about the race.
There's a lot of luck involved too. You can do everything right. You can have a fast car. You can put yourself in what you think is the right position and get caught up in a wreck. It's tough to win the Daytona 500. There's a lot of great race car drivers that have never won that race.
When you think of Sunday is going to be hot, somewhat hot. It's going to be 80-ish, right? And the sun's going to be out. That's the big thing. And the track's going to be slicker. So the car's handling will come into play a lot more. We might need to tune our car a little bit differently to try to maximize the performance out of our car. And you never know you got it until you get there. Until you get to the start-finish line, anything can happen. So, it's just how our races are. There's no way you can really tell who's going to win until you get there.
I think that really after winning it, you respect it more than what you did before you win it, because you see all the media and fanfare that you have immediately when I get announced at an appearance or at a golf tournament. It's not Denny Hamlin 25-time or 30-time NASCAR race winner. It's always 2016 Daytona 500 champ, Denny Hamlin. So it changes your resume a little bit for sure to win this race, and certainly is life-changing. It's certainly my biggest accomplishment in racing.
Okay, Kip. Eric Almirola discussing how hard it is to win here at Daytona. He knows. He's done it. He wins at Talladega as well. He rides very well in the super speedways, but last year it was heartbreaking for fans of the number 10 to have him get around into turn 2 in the lead, and then it's over. How quickly can it happen here?
Well, in just a blink of an eye, as it did with Eric last year. And I think, you get to that last lap, and it is the Daytona 500. I think the big thing is that everyone knows that it is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, unless you're someone like a Richard Petty, and it's a 7-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But, Dale Earnhardt Sr. only won the race once. And when you have that opportunity, you've got to go out and get it, or you may never see it again.
And also, former champions, they know as well. I mean, for guys who have won this race, we hear from Joey Logano, Denny Hamlin, have crashed out of this thing too. Kevin Harvick says the other night, listen, we haven't had much luck here at the super speedways. However, we've had very fast cars here. It's not like we come out here and not know what we're doing. He's a former champion as well. No one is exempt.
That's right, and it is a chess match. You have to be able to make sure that your car is in the right place in those last handful of laps. You may get shuffled back to the back, but we've seen guys work their way up. You got to have a lot of help, that's for sure. But you just got to make sure that you're within striking distance in the last handful of laps.
A couple of years ago, the Kurt Busch Daytona 500, fuel also became an issue. So teams play their role. You ever give me a memory you have of where maybe the Daytona 500 was lost in the pits, perhaps? Do you have one of those stands out to you?
I really don't, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that during the race we have so many different jobs that we do, so many responsibilities. Now, right. I had the coolest job for the race. I get to drive the pace truck coming up on Sunday.
You never run out of fuel in the pace truck.
I wouldn't tell anybody if I did. But one thing's for sure, and we notice this, when the command is given on Sunday for the drivers to start their engines, we hear the cars behind us fire up. And as quickly as they start the cars up, they turn them off. They're already in fuel conservation mode at the very onset of the race. So they are constantly thinking about that, right through to the last pit stop to make sure they got every last drop in, knowing that, if it goes into overtime, they need to be prepared for that as well.
All right, Kip, we have opportunities during the week to meet the owners, the drivers. We got to meet with Joe Gibbs yesterday. JGR, the coach, the Washington Redskins, anything you want. Joe Gibbs is a Hall of Famer in many walks of life. The Gibbs family and the racing family recently suffered a loss, the loss of JD, his son. He was 49 years old. The neurological disease, it took a toll. And finally, here we are, we're dealing with the aftermath. This is part of not only the Gibbs household, but the Joe Gibbs company, the racing community. What did J.D. Gibbs mean to you and Joe Gibbs Racing, and how has this affected the impact of the sport?
Well, I was very fortunate in the fact that I met J.D. and his brother Coy very early in our careers. They were racing late models, in North Carolina. And so I was able to be around those guys then. They were first class at that point in time. I was the director of our K&M Pro Series when Joe Gibbs Racing had a champion in the series, and J.D. came up to accept the Champions Award, the Car Owners Champions Award during that presentation. He was one of the guys that you could put him up at a podium to give an acceptance speech. We would all have everything scripted out, what we would say. he would not have the first script, the first note.
That's a football coach in him, isn't it?
Well, but he was able to.
Rubbing off on his son.
He remembered everybody, everything that got him to that point, and was so eloquent every time that he spoke. Well respected in the garage, and speaking of JD, his dad coaches well. Just great ambassadors for our sport, and it's great to see Coach here this weekend.
Well, Coach was asked about it, and I thought his answer, it was very emotional, and also spoke well of this racing community and what's happening now moving forward. Obviously, the foundation coming forward that Joe Gibbs would like to get the word out on. So let's help him out here. Let's hear from Joe Gibbs at a press conference yesterday, talking about the loss of his son and what it means for the future of his family and the sport.
I got to tell you, it's been a time for our family and to see everybody in this sport and everybody that has stepped up to help us, everybody, Toyota, our friends, Bob, everybody. There's been so many people that walk up to me and say, JD did the following. There's so many small stories. JD, I honestly believe, not just because he's my son, I think JD was living a godly life and was touching so many people, and it's come back over and over again. We're using this weekend, too, to try and have everybody go to that website, which is jdgibbslegacy.com. I can't tell me how many people have walked up to me and said that thing made a huge impact in my life. There were over 3,000 people there that day. JD's life, JD lives on. He lives on in us, those 4 boys, his family, and all those that he's touched. And, God in his word said that those that have gone on before are in heaven cheering us on. I don't want to let JD down. And I just really appreciate how many people here have prayed. This is a close-knit family in a lot of ways. And so many people have stepped up to help us. I can't thank you enough. And it's story after story. As JD had a vision of helping inner city kids with Young Life, the funds that have been flowing into that have been unbelievable. And so JD's going to live on in all those ways. I just thank everybody here that's been a part of that. So thank you. jdgibbslegacy.com.
Okay, so, Joe Gibbs, very emotional, obviously, and you know what, listen, he came to work. He's here, he's helping his team. He's very much a hands-on owner there at JGR, and he likes to see what's going on. He lets people do their things, and one of the other things he said yesterday is he's approached it the same way he approached football. He's a people person, so people run it, and he lets people do their thing. But some of these owners, they love to let their guys do it. How does he? What are your observations of the coach?
Well, you're exactly right. He has surrounded himself with some of the greatest people in the industry. He doesn't have to worry about what goes on with each of his race cars because he surrounds himself with class people, just as classy as he is. His folks are an extension of him.
All right, we've just had the final practice for the Cup cars. They go into the garage. Give me the next 24 hours. Are we impounded? Can they look? Can they work on the cars? Can they touch them? Are they booted out of here? How does this work at this level now in the last 24 hours?
Yeah, so they're hard at work now. So after their final practice session of the day, they have their cars. They're able to tune on the cars, tweak on the cars, and they will essentially have about 2 hours after they came off the racetrack before the garage closes. When we open up in the morning, it's Katie bar the door. We'll open up at 8 o'clock. They'll be in inspection beginning at 9. Mm-hmm. They have to be in inspection by 9:30, and we'll have everyone gridded and ready to go racing before we get started at around 2:30 in the afternoon.
I've seen pictures and video of crew chiefs waiting at the locked gate to bust in there like they're kids at some toy store. I mean, is it that every second count?
It is, and I'll tell you, and that goes way back longer than I've been a part of the sport. There have been crew members that, they would kind of meander in the gate once it's open for 20, 30 minutes. They didn't have jobs very long. It's kind of a rite of passage to be the first one at the gate to come and get to work on the race car.
All right, I'm not going to nail you down here. I know you don't want to lean towards one driver or another, but give me a couple of drivers that we should watch tomorrow that maybe you're curious to see perform in the Daytona 500. I'll give you mine.
Okay.
I'll go first because in case you had him, I want to take him from you. Paul Menard, the 21 car.
Yeah, that's
I'm
a good
curious.
one. He had a great race the other night. Unfortunate circumstances kind of took him out of the running of it. But the Fords are tough, and Paul Menard's in one of the best Fords that ever has come to Daytona. And especially when you talk about drivers getting their first win. When I was part of the K&N Series, Trevor Bain, who was a graduate of our series, picked up his first win in a Woods Brothers car. So Paul Menard's a good one. But man, it's tough to count out the front row. Both of the Hendrick cars up there with William Byron and Alex Bowman. They're going to be tough. Jimmy Johnson's got a lot to prove. He needs to back up the win he had last week, and he's looking to get a points win now to break into the win column. But with the move that Joey Logano had the other night, it's going to be hard to count him out as well.
If he's in position, I can easily see Joey Logano making a move. By the way, the roar when he made his last move past Clint Boyer the other night. You heard the cars, you heard the fans over the cars.
Yeah, so we were sitting in the pace truck down at the end of pit road, and we could hear it. So it's awesome when you hear the fans above the noise of the crowd and above even having the doors closed to the pace truck. We'll look forward to hearing them tomorrow as well.
All right, Kip, thank you. This has been awesome, man. I really appreciate your time today.
Not a problem.
Enjoy the race today, and really enjoy the race tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And that is Kip Childress there. Don't forget, guys, check your local affiliate times for our Daytona 500 preview countdown to Daytona. We have a couple of guys you've heard of in the show. There we had Austin Dillon, your defending champion, Joey Logano, the defending points champion, Bubba Wallace, who finished second here last year, Richard Petty, who you mentioned, the 7-time winner
Absolutely.
of the Daytona
the
500. So listen, that's an awesome show. Kip's going to go check his listings as soon as we leave here. But we thank you for joining us today on Countdown to Daytona. We're going to see you tomorrow. A special guest planned for our pre-race coverage. You don't want to miss that. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody. Have a great afternoon.